now in year number 4. It's a Yank on the Footy with Craig Wessels. Let's all sit back and enjoy a chat about the greatest game on the face of the earth. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 249 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels, coming to you from Sandusky, Ohio, and thanks for checking out this episode. This is my 5th episode in my series on why I truly believe American NFL fans will love the NFL. In a moment, I'm going to be joined by Thomas McMillan. Thomas is the host of the Any Given Sunday podcast and YouTube show. Now, before I dive into the discussion with Thomas, I do like to start out an episode. If you're new to the podcast, I do give a shout out to a local footy club at the outset of each episode. And today's local club are the Kilmore Blues of the Northern Football League in Victoria. The club has teams from the juniors all the way up through senior sides. And coming up on the 26th this week, the under-9s through the under-16s had their final practice games of the year in preparation for starting their 2023 fixture. They're facing off with 3 different clubs, the Wallen Magpies, the Whittlesea Eagles, and the Mernda Demons. Now, the Kilmore Division III reserves begin their season on April the 15th, facing off against the Lorimar Power at the Lorimar Reserve Main Oval. Now, last week, many members of the club participated in a bunch of different fundraising events for their Big Night In, which they had this past weekend, including Rhino and Pickles running a marathon, and longtime supporter of the Blues, Paulie McDonald, doing a 200-kilometer bike ride to raise funds for that evening. Great job, gentlemen, and I want to wish the Blues the absolute best in 2023. I hope they have a fantastic, fantastic season. Now, before we jump into the chat, I do want to take one moment and reflect back on one of the previous clubs that I had given a shout-out to. If you've listened to any of my more recent episodes, I've had a discussion about the Tracy Village Razorbacks in the Northern Territories up in the Darwin area. And I featured them back in episode 223 discussing a social media post about one of their under-12 players by the name of Anthony, who had suffered a pretty significant arm injury last weekend. Now, Anthony's under-12 side did end up winning their premiership, but this past weekend, their Division I senior men's side defeated Jabiru, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, 9-8-62 to 6-9-45 to capture the NTFL Division I premiership. Ashley Ringen was named Best on Ground, receiving the Bill Best on Ground medal, named after the late Bill Gear. Razorbacks, this has been a fantastic year. This is 2 premierships in the last week and a half or so, so absolutely fantastic. I appreciate all the kind words that I've had from so many of you, and I do appreciate your generosity as well. That was absolutely awesome. I will let you know several of the shirts and jumpers and such that were sent, I have shared with young people, young children of teachers that work in the school that I teach in. So they were thrilled to hear the story about those, and the kids were very excited to receive those. So let's go ahead and jump into my chat with Thomas McMillan. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another one of our discussions on why NFL fans would love the AFL, and I am joined by one of the hosts of the Any Given Sunday Australia podcast, and this is Thomas McMillan. And Thomas, thanks for joining me this morning, sir.
No, you're more than welcome, mate. Appreciate inviting me on. I appreciate
you taking time. I know you just got off of work, and I see you're rocking the new shirt there. I saw you guys talking about that in your most recent episode there, and yeah, shipping is a little more than you thought it was going to be, right? From what I heard.
Yeah. I haven't shipped to the States yet. I'm sure that'll be a little bit more again.
When I buy stuff from the cat store, it's usually about $25 shipping.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, fair.
Yeah, about 2 years ago, I had a gentleman that's a cat supporter who's also a big Cleveland sports fan. That he sent me a bunch of cat stuff, and I sent him. I'm almost 60 years old, but I've been collecting baseball, football cards for since I was a little kid, and I went through like all of the binders and such that I had and pulled out a lot of duplicates, and I sent him a 3-ring binder full of cards that probably weighed about 20 pounds. and it was over $90 to ship it there. And my wife said, "You're not doing that again." I said, "You're right, I'm not." So how did you become a fan of the NFL?
I've always, like we just spoke about before offline, that it really coincided well with the AFL, and one was September till February, and then in the AFL's February through till September. So it really worked well with. I worked from home at the time, and during the day it was on, and it worked perfectly to watch it. And my dad always talked about this team they were called the Cheeseheads, and I didn't quite understand, but once I did understand, I really got behind the Packers, and as you can see from all the stuff behind me,
yes,
grown up a Packers fan. So
I'm seeing two Packers helmets, Dolphins, a Chargers, like an original, a white 49ers helmet. Okay. And I think it's a Panthers up there, a Seahawks.
I got some Cal. I got everything.
Okay. And an Alan Lazard jersey up on the wall as well. And I did see you had him on as a guest on the podcast as well.
I did, yeah, which was pretty huge early on. And then we just had, we're releasing it tomorrow our time, which Mike Burton from the Chiefs. So that was pretty huge interview.
Yeah, I saw you guys shared a little introductory clip on that, and I did see that. And that's an awesome get to, because he still is, he's still on cloud nine, and and set aside time to sit down and talk with you guys. So that was absolutely awesome. So yeah, the interesting thing about the Packers, and I don't know if your dad was a supporter of the Packers. Does he support the Packers also, or did he just know of them as the Cheeseheads?
No, he just knew of that. He's definitely a Packers man now because I've really got him into it, but he wasn't at the time. Okay.
Now, do you know the kind of the origin story of the Cheesehead thing now? Is that something that you figured out now?
I did go over. I watched one game, which was the Seahawks round one back in 2017, and then did like a tour. So I learned all about the Acme Pack, everything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, because plus, the state of Wisconsin is a huge dairy producing state also. So, I mean, you go to the Wisconsin State Fair, and I don't know if they offer them at Lambeau Field, but the fried cheese curds is a huge thing there. I mean, it's just I think if you have season tickets and you buy an order of the fried cheese curds for at each game that you go to, you actually get at the eighth home game of the season, you actually get your ticket next to a cardiologist. But
pretty much
yeah. But the neat thing about the Packers is that the Packers are in many ways the closest thing to an AFL club that the NFL has because of the ownership structure of the club, and that it is just it's absolutely awesome that they're owned by the fans. Now, have you been able to acquire stock in the club?
I haven't yet. Earlier this year, when it went up, I tried hard, but you have to be I have to have a residence in America to claim it. So I haven't been able to get someone to claim it for me yet, but we'll get there one day.
Okay, well, because I know somebody who works in the Cats front office who is a mad Packers supporter also, who I believe she said that she actually does own a little, I don't know how many shares, one share, whatever it is, but she does own some Packers stock, as part of the club. So it's just a neat concept, and I don't think the other 31 clubs are going to ever end up like that, because as I said in another episode, the other 31 clubs, you've got 31 prospective, Bond villains that own all of them.
Yeah, and no one's giving it up. So
no, they're certainly not. They are certainly not. So, as far as footy goes, who do you support in
Brisbane Lions?
Okay. They were my runner-up club when I was deciding on which club I wanted to support back in 2017. I started following the game in 16, and I narrowed it down. The final two were the Lions and the Cats, and I went with Geelong. And I have a long family history of working for Ford, which had a lot to do with that decision. And there was actually a player with the Cats at the time who kind of pushed me into their camp, and now he's on your list in Nakaya Cockatoo. So it's yeah. He and I think he could be a linebacker in the NFL, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially medium, he's a lot bigger than he looks too.
Yeah, he and I did a series of episodes over the off season on my most memorable game, and I actually did one, and it was a game that he was integral in pushing me into the Cats camp, and I shared it with him on like a DM on Instagram, but I'm guessing he hasn't read it at all. But yeah, I've got my Mackay Cockatoo button over here. So so the NFL has done an awfully wonderful job of growing the game overseas, and I hear rumblings that that there's going to be a game in Sydney in 2024, that the Rams are coming there.
Yeah, that'd be incredible if it was.
Yeah, so it's I don't know that for a fact, but I've heard some other people mention that that's likely going to be happening. So I guess we have to figure out, what can the AFL do to make inroads here in North America? Because, I honestly think, and NFL fans, you may not like me saying this, but I'm a bigger AFL fan than I am an NFL fan. And I've been watching the NFL my entire life. I mean, I live about a 90-minute drive from the NFL Hall of Fame. I haven't been there since I was about 25 years ago when I was still coaching football. We went there. We played a state championship game nearby there. So we went that day for a couple of hours, but it's been a while since I've been there. But how do we get the comp to realize that there's an untapped market here?
I think they know that there is, but they just haven't worked out a proper way to get it over there yet. Like, I know a few years ago they tried. I think it was Collingwood maybe went over and did a few preseason camps and things like that, but just haven't really broken into that market yet. So,
well, and I know 2020 there was supposed to be a round one game here. Essendon and GWS were supposed to play here. Might have been 2021, but whatever it was, COVID interrupted it, and so that didn't end up happening. But it's I just think that it's it is an absolutely wonderful comp, and I think it brings so much more to the table even than the NFL, because of just the fact that there's so much fluidity to it.
It's a 360 game. You can come from any angle, but I think one of the biggest is the actual ground that we play on. Like, there's not many ovals getting around. There's a lot of rectangles getting around, and it's easy to go through soccer and things like that. You can find pitches to play on all the time, but to have that oval surface is quite unique.
Yes. Supposedly there was somebody that was building some supposedly like world-class cricket grounds here in North America. Now, not necessarily with huge seating capacity, but in terms of the grounds themselves, it was supposed to be something top-notch. Some wealthy person who was a big fan of cricket, I guess, was working on doing that. But you guys have embraced the games here in North America. Now, would you say, because I know that your website and your Twitter account talks about how you discuss the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NHL, the MLB. Would you say that you predominantly focus on the NFL?
Yeah, 100%. We're an NFL show, but obviously, especially coming up now in the off season, we're going to have to dabble into the others, especially when it comes to the post seasons of the others. That's when we'll dabble in them, but we are definitely a predominantly an NFL player.
Now, do you guys, and because I've not gone far enough back into your catalog at all, but do you guys touch on footy at all, or are you guys just footy fans away from it, but just don't dig into that at all?
We bring it up just in more of our personal, because we all still play footy as well. So like so it definitely comes up, and we refer to different things as if it would happen in the AFL, how it would go, and things like that. But we don't discuss. Well, we brought it up because the other two boys are actually Geelong fans. So when Geelong beat Brisbane in the prelim this year, it came up for sure. But otherwise, it's more just a talking point than going through games and stuff.
I was thinking more along the lines of the grand final. I wasn't thinking about the Brisbane Geelong game. So that little celebratory hand raise there was more about the game with Sydney rather than Brisbane there. So hopefully that didn't get you too angry with me there.
All right.
So have you found that your friends that you associate with, the ones that you even still play footy with, have they all become followers of the NFL as well?
A lot of them, especially the NBA, NFL over here, they always know about it. They're not always across, especially the NFL, they're not always across all the rules and things like that. So everyone always seems to have an idea about it. But the fact that early on we started off just trying to be basic level NFL, if you had a question, send it in, we'll answer for you. Just trying to get their heads, especially around game. So they've all definitely jumped on board. Whether they're followers is a different story, but they all understand the game a bit better.
Okay. So you're finding that you are making some traction with your listenership, though. You've got a pretty steady listenership, because it looks like your subscriptions looks like they're on the uptick. You got a pretty good solid number of subscriptions on your YouTube channel, which I'll link to YouTube and to your Apple Podcast in the show notes. But do you get a lot of good feedback from the people who are listening? Do you get a lot of engagement from them? Yeah,
absolutely. Especially when we're able to get the guests that we have had on. I think the friends and family around here and listeners around here can really get around that, because they can relate to it a bit more, where just listening to it, if we're talking about, a specific play or a game or something like that, they might get a little bit lost. But to start off and listen to actually how people got into it, and we've tried to have a lot of Australians that are making their way into college football as well. So having that connection of, all right,
okay,
it's not just the US, it's the Aussie side of things. They can really get.
No, and like I said, I've not scrolled back far enough, but I imagine you've probably talked to somebody like Nathan Chapman from Pro Kick Australia, that sort of thing.
We're working on Nathan. Yeah, he hasn't quite come on.
I had him on a couple of years ago. It was great guy. He it was kind of fun, because he taught. I saw an interview with him where he was basically saying that within a few years he expected all the punters in the United States to be Australian, and I said, well, probably maybe all but 3 of them. And maybe 4, like the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy, the U.S. Military Academy, and the Coast Guard Academy would probably have Americans punting, but he may darn well have all of the rest of the spots filled by former footy players, which,
he's going pretty.
Yeah, it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. So, looking at footy, for the NFL fans, are there, it is a 360 game, but, if you were to make any comparisons between what you see in a gridiron game with an AFL contest, what similarities would you say that there are, and what differences do you think might be something that would just get the average American NFL fan to just sit up and take notice and go, holy cow, this is awesome?
Yeah. I think obviously the punter has the biggest translation into our sport, but besides the obvious where he's kicking it, I think, the big wide receivers and the tight ends, if you love watching them take amazing catches running into the end zone and things like that, that's happening 100 times a game with us. And, I'm sure you've heard about, taking a specky or something like that. We've got some athletes that can literally sit on players' heads, which is when it's incredible to see. And then if you enjoyed the big hits of the big O and D line, then same. We're doing that over here, but, it always seems to freak the Americans out when we're not wearing pads. It's just straight body on body, and there can be some really big, violent collisions, and they can come from any angle, which if you enjoy the big hit, then you can get around that.
But they might say footy players are wearing athletic tape.
Mouth guards most of the time. That's
yes, but the shoulders are strapped up, and that's usually about the extent of it. Yeah, it's and it's, it's interesting to see and I think it probably happens in the NFL, but you maybe don't notice it because of the helmets and face masks. But, when a player gets, takes a shot to the nose and gets the nosebleed, there's always an interesting approach then I'm not going to get into specifics, but there's an interesting thing that I've seen Footy do to deal with that problem during the course of the game, to where a player may only have use of one nostril for a while.
Digging it straight up.
Yeah, but we're not going to get into what may be getting utilized there. But I think if people have an imagination, they're probably going to figure that out rather quickly. Yeah,
it works surprisingly well. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'm sure with you playing, you've probably had that happen to you before.
Yeah, once or twice, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, it's I've described, Footy the way that I described it back early on when I started doing the podcast. I talked about it as being kind of a combination of rugby, gridiron, soccer, basketball, volleyball, cross-country running, mixed martial arts, and calculus.
Yeah.
Is how I described it, because it, as you said, it is so three-dimensional, because it doesn't stop. The NFL, there's a lot of great action, but that action lasts for 8 or 10 seconds. And then there's 25, 30, 40 seconds to catch your breath, to talk about it, to quickly go run it and grab a beer out of the fridge or whatever the case may be, and get back before the next play. You don't get that in Footy. And it's a wonderful, I think it's a wonderful alternative. As you said, it is a great fit for the NFL fan. So if you happen to be an NFL fan who is not a baseball fan, and and as I mentioned to you off air, the salary cap is one of the things that's really got me irked. But a lot of the other rules in terms of having pitch clocks, telling a pitcher how long they can take to throw the ball, the elimination of the shift this year, because you have, and the analogy that I've used is with cricket. I said, think about it. If you're a cricket fan, and I know there's all the different levels and different comps, they have the tests and the Big Bash and that type of stuff. But let's just say that the Big Bash, is that the BBL?
Yeah.
Let's say the BBL decided to make a rule that, if my team realizes that this person who's up to bat can only hit the ball one direction, so I deploy my defenders that way in order to catch the ball and get them out. If the league then says, well, you're not allowed to have that many defenders over there because it makes it difficult for that person to hit the ball there, you might say, learn to hit the ball the other way. Yeah. Hit the ball. There's an entire other part of the stadium or ground that you could hit the ball to. Well, baseball, starting this year, baseball has said, and if you've watched some baseball, which you guys talk about it a little bit, what has happened over the last few years is that players are so gung-ho on trying to hit home runs and the launch angle and that sort of thing that they have, most of them or many of them, have forgotten how to hit the ball the other direction. So defenses have been moving an infielder over to the other side of the field to try to get that person out. Well, they're not allowed to do that anymore starting this year. So that extra infielder, so it's rewarding players who cannot do their job well. And that's just something that really frustrates me. Yeah.
There is a rule in cricket of it's only on one side that you can have. So you can't have more than, I think it's 6 fielders on the one leg side. But if you can't stop someone when you've got 5 fielders on that side, then something's wrong, I think.
Yeah. So I mean but you're not. You wouldn't necessarily. And again, since cricket is very much a 360 game as well in terms of you making contact, you theoretically, if you can hit the ball behind you, you're allowed to do that, correct? I mean, you can hit it in any direction. So you do have to be a little bit more selective in terms of where you deploy your defenders there. But baseball, it's pretty much you've got one direction you're hitting the ball. It's about a 90-degree plane of the area that the ball is in, quote unquote, fair territory where the runners can move up. So I I miss baseball, but I am so thankful for footy. I haven't looked back for it though. I mean, I grew up a Cleveland sports fan, so yeah, I've been a Browns fan my whole life. So those of you who are St. Kilda supporters, you know what it's like to be a Browns fan because we don't win very often either. You guys have one premiership in your history. We haven't won one since 1964, so it's been a while.
66, I think. So they're the same.
Yeah, and now they did have some success back in the 40s and early 50s, but not again since 1964. And I'm since they came back into the league, it's been just mistake after mistake, heartbreak after heartbreak. So the thing with footy is that I don't have, I know I'm supposed to, as a Cat supporter, I know I'm not supposed to like Hawthorn. That's kind of what I've been told. I'm not supposed to like Hawthorn, but I don't dislike Hawthorn because I came to watching footy so late in life that I don't have that in my DNA. You being a Packers fan, you know which club you're supposed to hate, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could really be two.
Yeah.
The Bears and the Vikings.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, but do you really deep down hate them because you didn't necessarily grow up with the game, or if your dad told you about it, maybe you did grow up with the game, so maybe you do have that in you that I don't have.
Yeah, well, I reckon I was about 10 or 11 when I got introduced to it.
Okay,
so about 20 years.
Okay,
but yeah, I think definitely the Vikings I have probably more of a hate for than the Bears, but I reckon that might also be from recent years where the Vikings been a bit more successful than the Bears, so it's been a bit more of a rivalry than the Bears, unfortunately. So
now I'm not supposed to like the Steelers. I respect the Steelers because that organization is very well run. They do a great job. Now I don't know. I'm assuming. Well, if you've been following the game for 20 years, then you know the history of the Browns and what happened, because I absolutely loathe the Baltimore Ravens. I hate the Baltimore Ravens with every fiber of my being. I've joked with people that I said that if my first wife owned an NFL team and her team was playing the Ravens, I would go sit in the owner's box with her family to cheer against the Ravens. Yeah.
That's what we love about it, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing that I hate about it. So it's So, you talked about, the speckies and that type of thing. And, just sheer speed and what a lot of them, fans who have not watched, or people who've not watched footy before may not realize is that the ground is massive. From basically from the goalpost at one end of the goalpost at the other end is about an average of about 100, depending upon the ground, it's about 175 meters away.
Yep. So,
yeah, it's which means that it is about 55 yards longer than an NFL field, and also about 150 meters wide at the midpoint.
Yep.
And it's shaped like an oval, which, as you said, is just it's something that we haven't recognized. It'd be interesting to see the NFL played on an oval field.
We did have the Cal Bears and Hawaii came out and played, but a lot of our stadiums, because we have the NRL, we have rugby union, we have soccer, a lot of our stadiums nowadays can shift, especially on what we call them the wings, on the sidelines. We can bring in the stadium, make it more of a square. So
okay. So can that have? Because I think the turf can come out at Marvel, can it? Isn't it movable?
Marvel can, yeah. Or they just it won't come out, but they have stuff they put on top of the turf, yeah.
Oh, okay. So they could have a different, they can move the stands, or they can move things around there. Yeah. I don't know if the MCG works that way or not, but I'd say probably
they
not.
Put stuff on it, but they can't move the stands.
Okay, so you'd still be a good distance away from the action on the field if they were there. So. Which is why if they come and they said they're going to be going to Sydney, they're probably going to the SCG, I would imagine.
No, there's the.
Or is there
I can't remember.
or is there
No,
another
there's
soccer field that would
stadium.
fit them?
Yeah, I think
Rugby.
it's Olympic Stadium or something they've called. I can't know the name, the sponsor's name.
Well, that
But
makes sense.
You go to that one for sure because that's the one that holds about 70 or 80,000.
Okay, so even more than the SCG.
Yeah, the SCG is quite small and old. It's you go into the SCG for the love of the actual stadium and things like that.
Well, yeah, and depending upon the game, sometimes the players end up getting locked outside of the stadium. It's happened last year when Buddy kicked his 1,000th. That was still that image right there, and I showed that footage to my students. I've been a teacher for 29 years, but I showed that footage to my students, even though the Cats lost that game by 5 or 6 goals. They got their revenge. But just seeing that overhead shot of the crowd just emptying onto the field and engulfing him was just something to behold. I mean, that's something that probably never going to see another 1,000-goal kicker in footy.
Nah, not the way the game's played now.
Yeah, it's so. What part of the game do you think would be the most difficult for Americans to grasp?
I'm not sure. I think the fact that it is, like you said, it's non-stop. So in terms of playing it, you really have to you have to be strong, but you have to be able to like you said, run and run and run and run. Like we do have breaks. You do go to the bench, but you only go on the bench for 1 or 2 minutes and you're back on the field. So in terms of playing it, I think that constant moving would be harder for a lot of people coming across from the NFL. It probably suits someone like from what I know, like a lacrosse player. That's probably a bit more of that kind of constant movement, constant around. I might be a little bit off base, but that's just off the top of my head there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, just because it is non-stop, like it's 20 minutes plus time on, but it's pretty much 4 30-minute quarters. So you're going non-stop for you're close to 2 hours. So
yeah, it's now if you were going to recommend a classic game for an American fan to go find on YouTube to sit down and watch, what game is there one that sticks out to you that you would say, okay, go find this one on YouTube?
Of recent year, actually, there's a classic game for Brisbane versus it's good for Brisbane versus Geelong. They called it the Miracle on Turf, I reckon. It was Geelong's been very good for a very, at least 20 years. You've been really up and about there. Brisbane had a real rough patch about 2014, 2015, around there. We were on the slide, but I reckon we were close to the bottom of the ladder, and you guys were first or second. And I won't ruin it, but you were a long way up, and we came back, and it's a very good tight finish. So that's definitely one I would look for. It's Geelong versus Brisbane. But
I actually saw somebody mention that particular game on Twitter yesterday, and I told them, I said, I would love to, and they were talking about how much they enjoyed that game, and I told them, I said, I would love to, have you on as, to talk about that particular game if that's your most memorable game. And I had a couple of Cat supporters going, you probably don't want to talk about that. And I was like, sure I do. I mean, I don't, if it's something that's memorable to you, I don't care if my club lost it. I mean, it's, I would talk to a Richmond supporter about the 2020 grand final, where the Cats got thumped, because, Dusty Martin had a phenomenal second half of that game. And then I can always speculate and say, would a healthy Gary Ablett have made the difference in that game? And he breaks his shoulder, 5 minutes into the game, and granted it was going to be his last game. I don't know if he would have been enough to get them over the hump or not, but it'd be fun to speculate on.
Absolutely.
So when you go to games now, you don't live in Brisbane, do you, or do you live down in the Melbourne area?
Down in Melbourne, yeah.
Okay. So when you go to games, and I don't know how often you get there, where do you generally sit on the grounds?
So we normally, back in the past, we used to be called a cheer squad, which is the team that used to sit behind the goals. But as I've grown, that was during when Brisbane won all the premierships, which was amazing. But nowadays we go a bit more. It's harder because a lot of our games are at the same time that I'll be playing, so I don't get to go. But when I do get the chance, I usually try and sit on the wing because you can. I feel like you see a lot more when you're on the wing. Second level, see the whole game and you can see the whole ground.
Okay. Now I've asked some of the other folks that I've had on. I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know if you've been able to watch an NFL game through what they call the all 22 camera. Have you been able to do that yet? Where they, because the NFL, I think like the NFL Sunday ticket here that, where you can like get all of the out of market games and watch, so if I get the Cleveland game here and usually like one other game each week here. But if I buy this extra add-on thing where I could watch all of the games that are outside of the Cleveland market, but they also then will offer up what's called the all 22, which is basically it's like a camera that they have at each end of the stadium that's up above like the goalpost. So you see the entire field opening up. So you see all 22 players at one time from behind the offense.
Yeah.
I think it would be awesome, for fans like myself who've been following the game for several years, but still have never been to one in person, to be able to see a footy game from that angle, on camera, just to show how players are deployed throughout the ground, because you don't really get to see a really good example of that during the course of what's televised. Yeah,
absolutely. Because you're following the ball more than you follow players. But so we do a lot of that stuff. I played semi-high football when I was a bit younger, and there is behind the goals footage, and they use a lot of that stuff to show how, like you said, formations and how we've set up and things like that. Also to highlight players if they've done something really well. So there was one I remember back in the day, Dane Swan. He played for Collingwood. He didn't look like it, but he was an elite runner, and they just showed from behind, from one end where he started. He got a kick at fullback, and the ball worked its way around, and he sprinted down the other end of the other side of the field, and then took the mark at full forward. And so it's a beautiful tool for coaches to be able to show this stuff that you need to do. Yeah. So I can agree with what you're saying there. I haven't watched it go. And
he is still. I know he's doing a what they might call a barnstorming tour around Australia right now with Ricky Nixon, and playing games with like local clubs all over the country to like help raise money and that sort of thing. Because he's going to a club in South Australia that I had on the podcast last year, who had lost like 104 games in a row.
Yeah.
Nangwari, in the little town in South Australia, and somebody had burned down their clubhouse. I mean, this club had just gone through hell. And it was funny because the day I was supposed to do the interview, I was going to have two of the players on, and one of the players tore his ACL that day. So, so they sent me a picture of him in his hospital bed, but he wasn't able to make it. So, here in the States again, we're in a similar position to you when the games are on, because they're on, early on like Monday mornings in Australia. So, does your work schedule change during the NFL season because of the NFL, or do you just end up able to like record the games on your TV or on your recording device and then watch the games later on?
Yeah, so work here. I'm a shift worker, so we're all three of us. We're shift workers, so unfortunately, it won't change to suit the NFL. But we are very fortunate that we do get a lot of time that we can watch it. But so at the start of the season, without changing, we go daylight savings and things like that. So the early games are at 4 a.m, which can be quite challenging. But I'm lucky enough that the Packers are usually on prime time, so I get to watch them. It's at 11 or 12 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's perfect.
There
for
you
me.
go.
But,
there you go.
Yeah, We do. It's on ESPN, so we are able to record it and watch it if we need to.
Good deal. Yeah, that's And do they offer some sort of like a package where you can get all of the games to watch, or do you only get a select few games there?
Nah, so not through the providers, but we can get games through the NFL that you can. You have anything and watch it however you want. You can get. I think it's NFL. Is it 60 or 30 or something, and it just condenses the games into 30 minutes or minutes, and so those who don't have as much time can watch it.
Well, that works. Yeah, because we have, those of us who are like international members of our clubs and that sort of thing. We get what's called the Watch AFL app, so we'll get all of the games. We can watch them live or on demand, and we can actually watch games on there going back to 2017. Yeah. And then all of the Fox Footy programming is available on there, and I wish they could get the stuff on Channel 9 and Channel 7 on there as well. I mean, we're getting the games from Channel 7. Why not give us the program that's on there as well? Because, I mean, some people I've talked to are not necessarily big fans of the front bar, but I enjoy it. I would love to be able to watch that when it's on, or, Footy Classified, instead of having to go find it on YouTube. Because it's, sports-wise, I'll watch the Browns play, and I'll watch, the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Naval Academy play. But that's about all I watch in terms of sports here in the U.S. The only other stuff that I watch, the only things I watch are footy, and that's I've been using the podcast to try to encourage my fellow Yanks to check out this game, because I do think while you have fallen in love with the NFL, I think that, and this is my opinion, I think the AFL, I think that Australian football, not necessarily the AFL, but I think Australian football is a superior game because of the three-dimensionality, because of it's a nonstop type thing, because you're playing offense and defense sometimes within split seconds of one another. There's not the shift where you go to a commercial break and that sort of thing, and the other guys come out and you get to go take a rest. No, you're out there and you're going, and if you're a midfielder who's got great lung capacity and you've got the endurance for it, you may be running 15, 16 kilometers in a game. Yeah, and maybe even more than that, quite frankly, because it would be. I've seen some where I've converted it where some of them have run 7, 8, 9 miles during the course of a game, while getting knocked on their butt 27 or 28 times a game as well. It's just it has so many things that I think that Americans would love. So let's just say that Gil in his last action before he steps down, which is that ever going to happen? I know he said he's planning on stepping away. I've heard rumblings that he's going to go to the Olympic Committee and start working on that, but I don't know that for a fact. But let's say that he brings you on board to help with trying to promote the AFL in the United States. What recommendations would you make to him to try to garner interest in the game of NFL fans?
Well, I think you've almost knocked it on the head just before, where we're growing. The NFL in Australia is growing not almost by saturation. It's just having the ability to see the programs that we want to watch, and we get Sports Center, we get NFL Live, we get all those shows at reasonable times that we can actually watch them, where it sounds like we're not quite getting the AFL to the people where they want it, and it's probably a little bit of like Channel 7's, not wanting to give up the rights and things like that, which is that's not going to help grow the game. We've got to work together to move forward to get the game to the people to actually watch and see, and not have to YouTube all the shows to be able to get their heads around it. Where just if we get the show to the people, and that's the only way it can grow, I think. Yeah,
that's and I think I'd mentioned it. The one big thing here is that that we're finally the Fox Sports here is, like I said, is bringing some games on. So we'll get anywhere between like 3 to 6 games each week. And then the rest of the games will be on what is called Fox Soccer Plus, which is like an additional pay service to get the games to watch them there. But there's zero advertising. And I mean, I have seen advertising for NFL games during footy games. I have seen, them, saying that, that this game is going to be on this channel at such and such a time. I've seen that happen on footy games, but there's nothing with the channels here that are carrying these games. There's, there's nothing that says, hey, Collingwood and Richmond are playing at, 4:00, Eastern time here in the US, set your DVRs, that sort of thing. And I think it would be, I think it would be great if the AFL would produce, and I don't know if the NFL does this, but does the NFL do like a highlight show at all that's specifically for Australia or for international fans?
For the NFL, we got Sports Center Australian version, which they do cover.
Okay.
So the teams that we're going to watch, so that's probably the closest thing to a highlight show that we'd get, but. Well, we don't need one because we have access to all the highlight shows that you're getting.
That's fair. We just it's almost like it's a secret that these games are on here.
That's what I'm saying. You've got to get it out.
Right.
People actually know. Watch it.
Yeah, we've some of the other folks that I've talked to have argued that maybe we should have on a Thursday night here at 8:00 in the evening, which would be then in like an early Friday morning your time. Maybe a highlight show looking back at key moments of the games from the previous weekend, and then spending maybe even a half an hour thing with them where you spend part of that half an hour talking about the games that they're going to be carrying on their networks that weekend and just introducing them. And because what we'll get here instead is we will get 20-year-old UFC fights on these channels. We'll get, old fat guys bowling. We'll get 15-year-old Texas Hold'em poker tournaments. And they promote that sort of thing. And what the most mind-boggling thing is that when a game will end, if there's still time before the next program is supposed to start, they'll fill it with, and they've been doing this since I've been watching it. They'll fill it with this video that's basically it's on a loop, and it's got to be one of the 2 rugby leagues in Australia. It's like 20 minutes of rugby with really bad techno music. That they're just showing rugby highlights, and it's all, and they're basically like saying that, okay, that game you just got done watching, well, this is the same stuff that you just got done watching, and it's not the same thing. It's two completely different sports, and it's frustrating as heck that they cannot just take a couple of minutes and just let people know because if the AFL could figure out how to get 1% of this country interested in footy. Just 1%. That's 10% of Australia's population.
Yeah, exactly.
Just 1% of this country interested. Think about the windfall in terms of international memberships, people just going, holy crap, this game is awesome. I want to go see it live. An increase in tourism dollars, increase in memberships, which then that money can be turned around to help all kinds of different things, whether it be, concussion research, reconstituting local footy clubs that were decimated by COVID, getting a stadium funded in Tasmania, whatever it may be to help grow the game, setting aside money to put a roof on a stadium when they say, okay, we're going to put the 20th club in Darwin, which I would think that's where it has to go if they're going to have a 20th club. Because I don't think you're going to put I don't think at this point in time with establishing 2 clubs in Sydney, Adelaide, Perth, that you're going to put a 3rd club in any of those cities. Now,
exactly.
Perth, Perth, you might have enough of a population, and Sydney, you might have enough of a population to say it's legitimate to do that. But, GWS is struggling to garner any kind of support there. So I wouldn't see them putting another club there. But, Darwin, I think that, if they had a stadium with a roof, an indoor stadium like Marvel or something like that there, I think it would probably go like gangbusters because it would be the off season for them there. So I don't know. I think it's the greatest game on the planet, but I think we're doing a very underwhelming job of supporting the game and promoting it here. And it's just frustrating. And that's why I'm reaching out to folks like you to try to figure out how can we get people excited about this game here? Because, like I said, if an NFL fan saw this game, I think they would fall in love with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they would, especially some of the hits and things like that. If they had in the NFL, then they would see, even just one quarter of the AFL, and I think, wow, this is just next level kind of stuff.
Yeah. So before we wrap up here, tell us about your show, your co-hosts, where we can find it. What can we expect from it? If they go back and dig into your catalog, what can they find there as an NFL fan here in the US that might, and you know what, before I do that, I meant to ask this to you earlier. Have you gained some traction with NFL fans here in the US listening to your show?
Yeah, I think we're starting to make some headway in there, especially Australians that have moved over there. It's I think a little bit comforting sometimes maybe to hear a voice that you can relate to.
Yeah.
Instead of hearing the Yank side, hearing a voice and maybe relating. Like I said, we do refer back to the AFL and things like that. So from what I understand, from what I have heard, but it's not just the States. We've got people in, over in the UK that are in the same boat, that are wanting that kind of, exposure to the NFL, but they're hearing it from their native land, I guess, with lack of a better saying. So I do think we are making traction in the States. We'll get there.
Yeah,
sure.
Because I'm at a point right now where about 60% of the people that listen to my podcast are in Australia.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, it's the overwhelming, because there's not a huge amount of interest here yet. I mean, we have the USAFL, which has about 4,000 people playing in the game here in there's like 50 different teams across North America, but in the US that play the game, from Maine to Southern California, and everywhere in between. But it's a tough slog, and there's not a whole lot of people that have gotten into it yet. And that's why I just wish people, if I could just, go and knock on everybody's door and say, hey, set your DVR for this time on FS1 or FS2, and then go watch this game. And here's a little introduction in terms of how the game works, and you're going to love it. And I think they would. So, as I'd mentioned before, tell us about your show and your co-hosts and all of their wonderful qualities, and a couple of their character flaws, since they're not here to defend themselves.
I don't need introduction to sink the boot into those boys. They are. So, it's pretty much just three Aussies that. Well, I kind of got it started. I listened to a lot of podcasts and watched a lot of podcasts, and thought, you know what, I felt there was a little void in the market for Australians who, like I said, wanted to listen to Australians speak about the NFL. So we've been just about 12 months now. We did start off, like you said, talking about all four major sports, but that was mainly because, in the off season we needed to get some content. We needed to start the ball rolling. But
right.
We're definitely predominant podcast, but we will touch on all four sports, especially as it comes to the playoffs and the finals and things like that. But yeah, we've been lucky enough to have a few big names that have come on from the States, and we've got a lot of young Australians that are making headways in college, especially, which is it's good to hear, and then it gives you a face to follow and a team to go.
Mm-hmm.
When we turn around and say, Thomas Yasman from the Utah Utes is playing this week, they go, oh, actually, I know who that is, and they can put a face to a name and identify with the team and things like that. So
that's outstanding.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. So, and the three of you are all in Melbourne then?
Different parts of Melbourne.
Okay, because I saw that, when I was watching, I think the episode that you just released yesterday or the day before, you were talking about eventually you guys are hoping to work in studio together.
Yeah, so we've had one in studio, but so Tim lives down on the coast where I'm up north in the country. So we're about 2 hours apart, or an hour and a half apart.
Okay.
And then Danny lives in between. So we as we grow, we want to find a common space, I guess, where we can meet. Yeah, and do it.
It sounds like Danny is sitting in pretty good shape. Then, if he's between the two of you, he's not going to have to drive very far.
He knows how it works.
That was probably a good location on his part. Then, so where can people find your show if they want to tune in? And I hope that they do.
Yeah, so we are a bit more visual show now. We've moved on to YouTube.
Okay.
In 6 months, so. If you really want the full package, I think YouTube's the place to find it, which is just Any Given Sunday Australia podcast. But you can find us anywhere that you get a podcast. Just put in Any Given Sunday Australia, and we'll pop up.
Okay, well, outstanding, man, outstanding. So, ladies and gentlemen, my guest for this episode, encouraging you NFL fans to check out the AFL, is Thomas McMillan. And Thomas, I want to thank you for coming home from work and plopping down and relaxing with me for an hour to chat about this, because I know you've got your weekend ahead of you now, and I hope you have a terrific weekend, and get studying on the draft and see who's going where, and I hope that you'll let me know in an upcoming episode how the Browns are going to fix their run defense. Yes, yes, we have had the cheesehead version, the Swiss cheese version of a run defense the last couple of years. We couldn't stop anything.
Definitely been having such a strong run offense.
Yes.
Maybe he's just Nick Chubb's just really broken the boys down during preseason, and they've gone in with no.
That could be. Well, hey man, I appreciate you taking time out. I thank you for this. This was a lot of fun. It's great to see a passionate NFL fan. I wish your Lions the best of luck this year, except for the weeks that they're playing the Cats. I do have a soft spot for the Lions because my favorite player let me rephrase that. My favorite player is on their list.
Yeah,
he can't get a game, but he's on their list right now. So it's just a shame he couldn't stay healthy with you long, because maybe he would still be there, but it is what it is. It is what it is, man. But I appreciate it. Thank you so very, very much, man.
No, thank you for having me, mate. And we'll definitely stay in contact and do it again after the Lions win the flag this year, I reckon.
Well, there you go. If that happens, absolutely. I mean, even if it doesn't happen, absolutely. I would love to have you back on again.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cheers.
You guys.
Cheers. All right, Thomas, thanks so very much for taking time to sit down and chat with me, man. I do appreciate your insight, and I do really, really thank you for helping me to encourage my fellow Yanks to check out this awesome game. Now, ladies and gentlemen, remember that you can find everything related to the podcast over at my website, ayankonthefooty.com. You can get on the mailing list there, and I had 2 new subscription to the mailing list. Again, it's free. You just add your email there, and when new episodes come out, that will be in your inbox about 45 seconds after that episode is released. If you enjoy the podcast, you can leave a review over there as well. It's a really huge help to the show. You can leave a review right on the website, or it'll actually take you out to Apple Podcasts, so you can leave a review there as well. Let's help kick that algorithm into hyperdrive and get some more ears on this show. Now, it was great. I did get my notification from Chartable, which tracks podcast shows in terms of different categories. And last week, I was the number 21 football podcast in Australia. So that was pretty awesome. And there's a lot of fantastic shows out there. Many of them are ones that I listen to. Many of them are guests that I've had on the podcast. So those of you who are listening, I cannot thank you enough for sharing the word. If you haven't done so yet, I hope you'll tell your friends about it. If you enjoy the podcast, it'd be absolutely awesome. Retweet a new episode, or text a link to your friends, let them know about it. Put it into a group chat, tell them how much you enjoy this crazy American who's fallen in love with your game and is so appreciative of your generosity in sharing your game with me. Now, also, back to my website real quick. If you enjoy this show and you want to help it financially, you can certainly do that. You can click on the Buy Me a Coffee button. There's a little yellow button on the bottom left-hand corner, but then there's also a little Buy Me a Coffee tab on the right-hand side. You can click on that. Anything that comes in from that goes right back into helping to keep the podcast up and running, to pay the bills for that, running the website, that sort of thing. It's a huge help. You don't have to. There's nothing behind a paywall. Everything is here for you to hear. And I absolutely appreciate all of you who have helped out. And if you want to help out, you can certainly do that. If you have an idea for a guest, or you have a club that you'd like to have get a local club getting a shout out, feel free to drop me a note via email at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com, or you can leave me a note right on my website as well. You can find me on all of my socials, ayankonthefooty@gmail.com, yank_on Twitter, a Yank on the Footy podcast on Facebook, a Yank on the Footy over on Instagram. Those used to both be the same. It's a long story. If you go to my Facebook page and see my first post over there, just look for my name, Craig Wessels. I'm on LinkedIn as well, so if you happen to be on LinkedIn, certainly I'd love to connect with you there, because LinkedIn has been an awfully wonderful avenue for finding guests for the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, look out for one another. Check on your friends. Let them know you love them. Go out for a coffee. Round 1 is in the books. Exciting round of footy. I did very poorly on my tips this week. We'll be talking about that in episode 250, which will be coming up here in the next couple of days before the first bounce of the Cats back at the MCG to face off against Carlton. I appreciate the kind words, everybody. I appreciate your support. I thank you for sharing your wonderful game with me. And if this is your first time listening, I close out each episode the exact same way. Ladies and gentlemen, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I will catch you later. This has been episode 249 of A Yank on the Footy. Again, don't forget that you can reach me at Yank_on Twitter, A Yank on the Footy podcast over on Facebook, A Yank on the Footy on Instagram. Search out my name, Craig Wessels. That's just like blood vessels, but with a W on either LinkedIn or on Facebook. I'm there as well. You can find me also at ayankonthefooty.com. And my email address again, ayankonthefooty@gmail.com. All of these are listed in the show notes for every episode. Ladies and gentlemen, I do hope you'll share the episode with your friends and family. And until next time, goodbye.